Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Oh, my God, it's a mask burning. I guess that's permitted by the First Amendment, Mickey. In this country, you can burn your mask.
We're going for the compelling visual, but we're not going to actually burn the mask.
You didn't actually connect the flame to the mask in the end. I should tell our audio audience you had a lit cigarette lighter just only millimeter below a mask, and I thought the whole thing was going to go kablooey, but it was a bluff.
Well, it might set fire to my whole house, which is filled with kindling. So, as is your house, apparently. So, I decided not to do it.
Wait! I don't get that illusion.
Well, all those books behind you.
Right. Yeah.
But, anyway, who knows what toxic gases are released when you burn masks? So I didn't burn the mask.
Err on the side of caution. Mickey, can I ask you a question? Just a quick question.
I have a second visual for later in the show.
Well, speaking of visuals,
go ahead. Yeah.
Speaking of visuals, what happened to your hair? Last week, your hair was thick and lustrous. This year, it is, well, I don't want to say non-existent, but it's at that end of the spectrum.
I'm asking myself the same question. We'll have an answer for you next week.
Okay.
I think the answer is it's wet now.
yeah. Mine too.
I think that's so. This was like Liberation Day. It was like May 10th. It was like we were liberated in the mask department, and also they decided everybody goes back to school in the fall. So on those two fronts, the administration did an about face.
Sounds like there's a but coming. But
no. I think we're going to see more about faces. This shows that the administration, if the polls are bad, it will reverse course.
Were masks faring badly in polls?
Eric Erickson wrote a tweet, and I think it was correct that yes, the insistence that you keep wearing masks even as everybody after being vaxxed was faring badly, and people wanted to go back to school. Have their kids go back to school. So, and also if you want the economy to come back, you have to do that. So
now,
I think this augurs more about faces to come, including about what issue, Bob?
No, I don't know what issue.
The border.
The border.
I think
Can we suspend discussion of that for just one moment?
Sure.
It seems to me the impact of this directive that people who have been vaccinated needn't wear masks in most circumstances, except like on public transit and so on, is going to be that basically nobody wears masks, right? I mean, one problem is you go into a store, you don't know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. You don't know if the person not wearing a mask next to you has been vaccinated. And I would guess that the kinds of people who have chosen not to be vaccinated, and increasingly those are the only people who haven't been vaccinated, are the kinds of people not inclined to wear masks. So basically, that is the actual impact of this, right? No more masks.
You would think that. Walking around yesterday, everybody was still wearing masks. So it hadn't filtered down into my relatively woke, although not completely woke, vax-wise neighborhood.
I didn't realize Beverly Hills was woke. Is it woke?
Beverly Hills was traditionally famously liberal and democratic, but a lot of conservative Persians, or there may be a different word for them.
Iranians is the other word for
Iranians, but they I've told there's a more precise word. About a third of them are Muslim, a lot of them are Jewish. The rest would be Jewish, and they're quite conservative. They hate the mullahs. So I don't know what their position is on COVID, but they're not woke.
Okay, so what else can I say to keep us from getting to the border? I mean, don't you think there's other important stuff happening?
You got a long way to go.
You've heard about this Israel thing, right? This Israel-Palestine thing, right?
Yes, I figured you might have something to say about it. I read about it, and I read a very good article in the New Yorker about it, and that's about all I know.
What the article say?
The article, it traced the origins of the dispute to these evictions, I guess near the Temple Mount, near the big mosque there, and it sort of said this was the riposte to the Abraham Accords that Jared Kushner negotiated, reminding people that, yes, the Palestinians are still there, and that it was a power play that helped both Netanyahu retain power, which was precarious, and helped Hamas assert power over the Palestinians versus Abbas.
Yeah, I guess for now, I mean, it's, there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there were the kind of impending evictions. I mean, there are these homes in East Jerusalem, and this was, I think last week, the week before, we mentioned this Human Rights Watch report saying that Israel was guilty of apartheid. One of the things it did mention is this policy. The Israeli position is that Jews who lost their homes in 1948 should, in principle, be able to move back into them, reclaim them, and displace Palestinians, whereas Palestinians who lost their homes in 1948 shouldn't be allowed to move into them and displace Jews. That's among the implications of the Israeli policy.
The article mentioned that.
So, so that's part of it. And there was this Supreme Court decision that was going to come down on that. This has been tied up in court forever, the case in this one area, Sheikh Jarrah. They postponed that because there was so much other kind of inflammatory stuff going on. It was... the police, for reasons that are unclear, had, I think for the first time ever, denied Palestinians the right to congregate by the Damascus Gate, which they'd traditionally done on Ramadan. That created some unrest. And then, the decisive thing was, the thing that triggered the rockets from Hamas was the police, once they had demonstrators to deal with, actually pursuing them into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, in the interior of the mosque itself, firing rubber bullets, the concussion grenades and stuff, and that everyone who knows the territory says, yeah, that was pretty much guaranteed to get you rockets fired.
Do you think it was intentionally done by Netanyahu because this war helps him?
I don't know. I mean, the two theories are intentional and incompetence. And it's hard to say because, the government, there's only a loose sense in which Israel has a government now, I think. It's not, because they're in this twilight zone where they keep calling for new elections and nobody is able to assemble a coalition. Netanyahu remains technically the prime minister, but it's a very weird time. But now go ahead.
And how is the Biden administration handling this in your eyes?
They're pretty much saying, well, do what you got to do. And of course, Israel's policy is massively disproportionate retaliation. Their view is that to sustain deterrence, you have to kill, traditionally at least 10 times as many, Palestinians as Israelis die. They're definitely at least that ratio now. And remember, Gaza only has 2 million people. So when you, like right now, they've killed, 122 people in Gaza. If you wanted to try to translate that to American experience, it would be kind of per capita, like 25,000 Americans being killed. And the 30 kids would be 5,000 or something. The
argument you read on the web is that the Israelis do not target civilians and the Palestinians, at least Hamas does.
Well, Hamas doesn't target anything. Their rockets aren't that precise. They fire them. They'd be happy to kill soldiers with those rockets. They're just not precision-guided rockets. They fire them into population centers because they want to maximize the chances they kill somebody. Right. They do fire them at civilian centers.
And they celebrate when civilians are killed. That's the argument. That's what you read on Twitter.
They do. Yeah, they do. Not all Palestinians, I'm sure, but it's
what your friend Barry Weiss says.
Well, she's right about that. What does she say about the other stuff?
I didn't
including
read extensively.
Of course, you realize a lot of Palestinians are killed. Israel kills more Palestinian civilians than Palestine kills Israeli civilians. You realize that?
I suspect that, yes.
Oh, definitely.
I think only 6 Israelis were killed in the last account I saw, but maybe I'm wrong.
Right,
aren't there any... my reaction, of course, as somebody who survived at the New Republic by not knowing anything about the Middle East, is why do I care about some evictions in a Middle Eastern town? I mean, why does this the fulcrum on which American foreign policy should turn? Why don't we just disengage?
Which would be what?
I don't know. Israel can defend itself.
So you think we shouldn't give them any military aid? I mean,
No,
that is our tax dollars going to kill the Palestinians.
I guess I don't mind that much with the Middle East, but why should we exert all sorts of efforts to bring about Palestinian peace, in Israel?
Well, we're not.
Okay.
Exerting effort would involve putting pressure on the Israelis. That's where we have leverage, but we're not.
Why is it a huge crisis every time something like this happens that Americans have to care about?
Well, because from my point of view, my tax dollars are literally going to kill Palestinians. I mean,
if we didn't spend our tax dollars there, would you not care about it? I mean, what
no, I would still care because our relationship to Israel complicates our relations with the Middle East broadly. Like we're having trouble getting a nuclear deal with Iran done, which we thought we were doing kind of on behalf of Israel almost. But it's.
But they're still going to try to fuck up the nuclear deal, whether we support them or not. I mean, they think Iran is an existential threat. I don't know. It just seems
right. No, I didn't say that if we didn't send them the military aid, they wouldn't try to screw us on other fronts. I'm saying the entire relationship is problematic, and one thing that makes it problematic is the failure to resolve the problem with the Palestinians. But we are making no effort to resolve that problem.
I'm just trying to figure out what the Trumpism without Trump position, which is we shouldn't care so much about the Middle East. We shouldn't engage in neocon wars. We shouldn't try to intervene in the Middle East means. I think it means you don't solve the Palestinian problem. And maybe you don't give them aid, but I don't think you can have it. You can't have it both ways. You can't say we should pay less attention to the Middle East and damn it, we haven't solved the Palestinian problem. Well,
first of all, I don't understand your characterization of the Trump position. The Trump position is to do whatever Israel wants us to do.
Right, did you just say the Trumpist position was to recoil at U.S. intervention in Syria, trying to, affect the outcome in Syria and with Assad and who succeeds Assad and having troops there, sort of in the middle of a tripartite civil war? And why are we involved in the Middle East? Let Russia take care of it. That is the Trumpist position. If Russia wants to go in, fine. That's the Trumpist position. It's not necessarily Trump or Jared's position.
Well, I mean, in answer to the question, this theoretical position that Trumpism would hold if there weren't Trump. Well, we don't know what that is because that's never been the case in real politics. But
we do know there are people who write that.
Well, there are people who write lots of things, but it's not clear that there's any constituency for what you just described. Because remember, I mean, the Trump coalition includes lots of, evangelical kind of, Christian Zionists, you might say.
You don't think there's any constituency for being less involved in the Middle East?
I just don't think the Trump coalition includes a particularly high number of people who fit that description. Now, you might say the alt-right, if you look at like alt-right writers or something, fine, and you add them all up, and that's about 1,000 votes. That doesn't matter. I mean, in terms of Trump's actual constituency, it
doesn't have to be Trump's constituency. It just has to be a constituency in a national election.
Well, this leads me to the question of Liz Cheney, actually. But first, let me say one other thing about, I think, significant developments that are that don't necessarily bode well for Israel that we're seeing, okay? So the first thing is a huge development here from Israel's point of view was the civil strife. Okay, you had open fighting between Palestinians and Jews in Israel proper, and there is synergy between that, the unrest among Palestinians in Israel, and what's going on in Gaza. In that sense, I think Hamas has a new deterrent.
What do you mean synergy? I thought the civil war on the streets was mainly Jews attacking Arabs. It's not.
No, I think it works both ways. I think it works both ways. I'm not even sure that it was which was first. Both are happening. Now, in the long run, I mean, people talk about, civil war. Well, there's not going to be any kind of symmetrical civil war. I mean, it's the Arabs don't stand a chance in the long run within Israel. But as far as unrest, I think, for example, right now it's looking as if Israel may do a ground invasion. Well, I think one thing they got to be thinking is that the longer the war goes on, maybe the worse the civil strife gets, or the longer it persists. And that I'm wondering if that's not going to be kind of a deterrent in the long run. That's going to make Israel a little careful about sustaining wars with Hamas. If it has this corresponding, this effect on internal Israeli relations between Palestinians and Jews and leads to actual violence. The other thing is just that, like, you're seeing, and this is a segue to Liz Cheney, because
everything's a segue to Liz Cheney.
It's coming, believe me. And everything other than immigration is something I want to segue to, so I'm going to keep at this.
Liz Cheney's a segue to immigration.
Well, in that case, we'll segue to Stefanik instead.
Total segue to immigration. Super highway to immigration. Go ahead.
Okay, wait.
Second thing. You're making your second point, which brings in Cheney.
Some interesting, you're seeing, I don't know how much Israel cares about kind of how these things are received internationally. I sometimes think Israel's attitude is they're going to hate us no matter what we do. But it seems to me that in the American political sphere, you're seeing things look in the sphere of discourse. I mean, first of all, this does come right on the heels of the HRW apartheid report. You're seeing a lot more people talking about apartheid Israel. It seems to me you're seeing a few more people in Congress, really complaining about Israel's disproportionate response. And you're seeing things like, Max Boot said that Israel was responsible for provoking the rockets from Hamas, which is pretty striking. Now, it could be Max Boot working with his new resistance constituency. Who knows? But
yeah, that's the other stunning thing was Andrew Yang having to withdraw an instinctively pro-Israel press release he put out in New York. My God. So in New York, if you come out on Israel's side, you get enough shit in the Democratic primary or whatever election they're having that you have to retreat. That's stunning.
You're right. I mean, his first remark was what you expect from somebody running for mayor in New York. Israel has a right to defend itself. I will say it was pretty unqualified. He could have added a couple of things that would have maybe somewhat appeased some progressives without bothering anybody on the other side. But you're right. That's a good example. He got enough blowback on that, like from AOC, for example, that he walked it back. And to some extent, at least. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
So AOC and Max Boot are going to march arm in arm down Pennsylvania.
I'm thinking that's a presidential ticket right there.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So as for Liz Cheney, here's my question for you. I'm wondering, so she had her. So now she has officially lost her position in the Republican leadership. She is segueing to a new stage as the leader of the anti-Trump Republicans. I'm wondering how much support you think she gets from and how much her fortunes depend on kind of hawks. There are a lot of people who were sorry to see Trump, the seeming non-interventionist strand in Trumpism that you alluded to, and a lot of these never Trump Republicans, that's one thing that bothered them. I would think Max Boot is in this camp, and I guess
apparently we don't know.
Well, we don't, but I mean, here's my question: Republican hawks, that entails Republican hawkism entails a very staunchly pro-Israel stance. For some people, it's driven by pro-Israel considerations, for others not. But in any event, for Republican hawks, the pro-Israel thing is a big part of it. My question is, and so some of these people you saw desert Trump, Bill Kristol, Max Boot, Jennifer Rubin, they are motivated to some extent, at least by foreign policy. Sometimes you think their hope is to carry their foreign policy inclinations into the Democratic Party. I mean, a lot of them have really significantly moderated their views on domestic policy in ways that would endear them to Democrats. And what I'm wondering is, if now, with this Israel thing going on, and them looking at how progressives are reacting to that in not exactly a staunchly pro-Israel way, or at least, although, honestly, a lot of progressives just stay quiet, but I'm wondering if that is affecting their calculation about where their future home can be. In other words, are they going to say, Liz Cheney is our only hope? That's my question for you.
Your question seems like a bunch of different questions. How much support do the hawks get in the Republican Party? Very little, like 4 or 5%. I think they get huge support in the media because it's a way to keep the focus on Trump and to bash Trump. But no, they don't have a home in the Republican Party. And do they have a home in the Democratic Party? Well, they don't have much choice under that theory. Plus, if you were Israel, you would say, what's the greatest danger? The greatest danger is that the Democratic Party is about to abandon Israel. So you want them in the Democratic Party because you want the Democratic Party to be more hawkish. It also means that they're going to have a very unfriendly welcome in the Democratic Party, as Cheney already has had. If you read Talking Points memo, Josh Marshall goes, I think he criticizes her, or maybe there are some people who defend saying, stop attacking Lynn Cheney left, please. She's on the right side of this. And, so she's getting a lot of grief on the left. Okay, so I guess I don't understand your point. She has no constituency anywhere except the media. Well,
first of all, I would say, as for Israel, in your view, really needing to hold on to the Democratic Party, Bibi Netanyahu has not behaved that way. He basically declared war on Obama and basically made sure he held on to the Republicans, and he actually gave a speech in Congress premised on the idea of declaring war on Obama. And so I don't think, I think Israel until very recently felt it had a whole lot of Republican friends, and I don't know why it would think otherwise now. First of all, what is this poll you're talking about that says only 5% of Republicans support hawks?
I just pulled that figure out of my ass. You asked me a question, and that's my estimate.
I think there's been a real misreading of the fact that Trump got elected while talking a largely dovish talk. I think the moral of that story isn't that actually a lot of Republican voters are against a militaristic interventionist foreign policy. It's that a lot of Republican voters, and this is something they have in common with Democratic voters, don't give a shit about foreign policy. The assumption had been that you needed to talk tough. You needed to talk John McCain talk to win the support of the rank and file of the Republicans. Truth is, most Americans, left and right, don't care about foreign policy as long as Americans aren't coming home in body bags. And that's why foreign policy is controlled by elite groups and small, highly motivated special interests. So it's not clear to me that the hawks, it's not clear to me that they should conclude that their home is not in the Republican Party.
It seems to me that there has been a real shift. Keep in mind, the white working class, especially in the South, are the people who have to fight the wars. They may not be coming home in body bags, but their kids are coming home and saying, this war is in Afghanistan is a total lost cause. I don't know whether the people I'm marching with, I'm deploying with, are going to shoot me, at a moment's notice. And as soon as we leave, the thing's going to go all to hell. And so they have a very negative view. And the same thing happened a little with Iraq, certainly. And so the troops have talked to their parents, and their minds have been changed. I wouldn't discount the genuineness of the anti-war sentiment, and also the Democratic Party. Biden's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan is quite popular, I think, in both parties.
Yeah, okay, but if you look at things that are most important to hawks now, anti-Russia, anti-China, pro-Israel, where do you think those things would get more support in public opinion polls? Republicans or Democrats?
Anti-Russia, maybe Democrats now. Their whole thing is Trump sold out to Russia, so they've shifted in this completely absurd fashion into
I agree.
Anti-Putinism. Anti-China, everybody hates China. You get support for that among both parties, Bob. I think your faction is less than 5%.
My question was, where do you get more support, Democrats or Republicans?
I think it's pretty even. I think 95 in one and 90 in the other. And the third thing was Israel. I think Israel is pretty tenuous at this point. They have the elite. I don't think they have all that much support, but they would have more.
No, they do have they have a lot of evangelical support.
They certainly have more in the Republican Party. Yes.
Yep. So anyway, I'm just wondering if how the Max Boots of the world are doing their calculations at the moment. But
I think they're in trouble. They may wander in the wilderness for a while. I mean, I know what that's like. Maybe I could give a seminar on how to deal with the fact that you have no political home.
Maybe you should form a coalition with them.
Homeless?
You're a friend of Jennifer Rubin's.
I used to do a
podcast with her.
Haven't talked to her in years.
By the way, she's great at doing clickbait headlines. I never read the articles, but I'm tempted to click.
I'm not even sure she writes the headlines. Do we think she does?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's basically a blog. The last one was about the stampede to the Liz Cheney side of the Republican Party. I didn't read it, but that, of course, she would like to see a stampede. I think she's the only one who sees one.
Andrew Sullivan wrote his Substack today was about how there is a study which was right as far as this goes. They said there's an obvious future for the Republican Party to win election after election, which is going left on economic issues and drawing the line at wokeism and defund the police and all the cultural issues that are turning people off. And supposedly that's one of the secret sauce of as Ryan Jerdusky says, of Boris Johnson's big win in Britain. But the Trump won't let them get there. That's true. But then the unstated assumption was that Lynn Cheney was somehow on the right side. No, Lynn Cheney does not want to go there either. She's the exact opposite of where the Republican Party should go if it wants to seize this advantage and become a working class party.
What's the array of issues Andrew recommends? It's anti-woke.
It's I assume it's left on issues like for example, health insurance would be an obvious one.
Mm-hmm. Economic populist.
Not caring about
restrictions.
Tax cuts for the rich. Not caring about tax cuts for the rich. Mm-hmm. He has some anodyne phrase, but some form of reasonable immigration control. Go left on trade. No more free market. Trade is good for both sides, no matter what. And what else is there? Those are the big ones, I think. Probably he might include, anti-poverty policy and these tax credits that so annoy me. But you could design tax credits that would not reward non-workers. That would be perfectly reasonable. That Republicans might endorse as a way of encouraging parenthood and natalism, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. J.D. Vance is about to endorse at least that part. So that's what I think. That's what it would involve.
Now, the tough on trade thing reminds me there was a study done by the Wall Street Journal. Now, didn't you support Trump's China tariffs on grounds that they would bring jobs back to America?
Eventually, they will. Well,
I got bad news for you about the short term.
First, you have to move the supply chains out of China. Yes, which apparently is happening.
The Wall Street Journal says the Trump administration imposed the levies and blah blah blah. So they did this big. The Journal did this big analysis of trade data. The so-called reshoring of manufacturing hasn't happened in any appreciable way. Economic data shows U.S. companies instead turn to other countries in Asia for supply. Vietnam has been an especially big beneficiary, which is what people said, knowledgeable people said would happen. The They're not going to bring the jobs back here. They're going to send the jobs to Vietnam. And then the people who still don't have the jobs in America will just pay slightly more for the products.
Well, first, Biden has kept most of the Trump policies, probably for a reason. Second, what the pandemic has caused a desire to shorten supply chains all across the board. So once they're out of China, I think some will be coming to the United States. Third, a lot of them are going to Mexico, and we have an intense interest in Mexico prospering in a way that we do not have for Vietnam prospering. So I would say if a supply chain goes from China to Mexico, that's half a win for the United States.
So that means NAFTA was good because it fostered prosperity in Mexico?
I don't know about NAFTA being good, but fostering prosperity in Mexico is definitely good. For one thing, it reduces the flow of but it's just generally good. It means that we're going to have a more
okay. But I thought Trump was very anti-NAFTA. I mean, that's the paradox I'm pointing to. I mean, but anyway,
right? I'm not saying Trump was right about everything. I'm saying that the China tariffs, it's way too early to say they were a failure. And your beef is with your. Well, there you go. I mean, what more is there to say?
One more point about Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me, it was a little slow to register. When we talked last week, you were saying about Stefanik, you were unhappy with her because her policies aren't Trumpist, but she does have Trump support because she says the election was fraudulent, or however she puts it.
Right.
And I just realized
she's the worst of both worlds.
I think a lot of people have said this since then, but it occurred to me right after we talked that this is kind of amazing, that like the one thing you have to say, it's like, I think there's too much casual comparison of things to religion. But this is a little like a religion, right? I mean, it's like reciting the Nicene Creed. You have to say the election was stolen, and if you do that, it doesn't even matter what your policies are. That this woman has not a Trumpist bone in her, and yet Trump, she's now a Trumpist in good standing. This is not about policy.
Trump was an idiot to endorse her, but and very badly advised, I think. But he's an idiot himself. But keep in mind, as Byron York points out, there were several, Republican committee chairmen in the House who voted for impeachment. They were not punished. They were not stripped of their committee chairs. They were totally tolerated. It's their vote. What drove people crazy was Cheney was constantly harping on Trump and Trump's quote big lie, which is bullshit. What Trump is saying is mostly bullshit. I hold out the possibility there were some shenanigans we don't know about.
So you say what? You're saying
but
lie?
Anyway, the point is...
just be clear. You're saying it's not a lie or what? Did I misunderstand you?
I'm saying, as far as I'm concerned, it's false, okay? But I'm very suspicious of voting voting methods, and it's hard to pronounce there was no fraud, because I don't know that there was no fraud. I think Trump lost fair and square, and it's over. But
his lawyers never alleged fraud in court, not once.
But anyway, but he's obviously alleged fraud in his tweets. So that I said it's bullshit. Okay, is that enough for you? Okay. Anyway, the point is that Cheney was making that the big issue, and the Trump Republicans want to win control of Congress on a bunch of other issues. The most prominent being the issue that you don't want to discuss, immigration. So Cheney was getting in the way and making it all about Trump. So the Republicans wanted to get her to shut the fuck up. And they obviously have failed to do this, but she might be, now that she might be marginalized and she might be beaten in Wyoming. So it's possible that she will be heading for Evan McMullen land. But maybe not. One more thing. The flaw in this theory is the idea that they can sideline Cheney, bring up their issues of the border and crime and all the other things, and that Trump will sit on the sidelines and not intervene and make the election all about Trump anyway. Of course he's going to do that. The 2022 election. there are all these people saying, well, in 2023, we'll decide how to get rid of Trump. No, you're not going to win the House because Trump is going to make the House election in 2022 all about Trump also. Or all your messaging is going to go the fuck out the window. Sorry.
Not sure I understood that. I mean, first of all, you do think Republicans will almost certainly win the House, right?
Trump fucked up Georgia, and he can fuck up the House election. If he comes out and says, this is all about the election of 2020, and are you with me on the fraud claim, who knows what will happen. If they talk about immigration and crime, the Republicans will win. But Trump's not going to let them do that. He's going to say, of course I'm with you on immigration and crime, but the big test is, are you with me on this, on election fraud? And that could fuck everything up just like it fucked up in Georgia. So I'm not certain that the Republicans are going to win back the House. And plus, if Biden behaves as I think he's going to behave, by doing an about face on every issue that's doing badly in the polls, including immigration, he will do much better, and the Democrats will be much better positioned in 2022 than it looks like they are now. If you read Olivia Nuzzi's piece, which was seemingly an anodyne piece about the Biden administration's use of language, but it said basically the contrast between the two administrations is Trump fought out these policy disputes at the staff level, and we knew about them right when they were happening because they immediately leaked to reporters, and we knew all about who was on what side. The staff is very loyal. They don't leak to reporters, and they just got these orders from the 5 people around Biden at the very top of the mountain. So, and then they follow those orders like, 100%, like loyal soldiers. So but they don't know when the about face is coming. It's like a volcano. It's suddenly the volcano blows its top and boom, the refugee cap stays the same. Or boom, masks are removed. And so one day it's going to go boom, Mayorkas is out as DHS secretary and Biden has cracked down on the border. Now, maybe a bullshit crackdown and maybe a serious crackdown, but I'm predicting that that's going to happen.
Don't you think his coalition makes it kind of hard to do a 180 on immigration?
It makes it hard, but he's not going to do it now. Maybe when there's really sensitive legislation up before the Congress, but maybe once that's over, he reads the polls, and if the polls are killing him, I think he's going to change. The polls are killing him, and
are the polls killing him? Oh, you mean on immigration?
Yeah, and the moderates there are moderate Democrats, including Democrats from the border states who are Hispanic, like Cuellar, who are saying you're crazy. You have to change course. So he can't let La Raza and LULAC or whoever else is involved dictate immigration policy. They don't represent the majority of the party.
By the way, who are the 5 people around Biden at the top of the mountain who send down the thunderbolts?
God, she listed them, or somebody listed them.
Is Jill one of them? She must be one of the deciders. She's got to be a very important figure.
Right, but I don't think she's one of them. I think one of them is Michael Donilon, Bruce Reed, Ricchetti.
Bruce Reed.
Ron
we know
Klain.
Him. We could have influence.
Go ahead, try.
No, I don't know him very well.
He's a great guy, but I don't have any. Unfortunately, I don't have contact with him. Not that he listened to me anyway. But
do you think Jill will ever run for office?
Jill? No.
Yeah.
No.
Don't you think she's more appealing than Kamala?
Sure, but
let's do it.
In part because she's not wildly ambitious like Kamala.
I don't know.
I could see a Lurleen Wallace type deal.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well that may be true. That's not crazy.
Let's start the rumor.
Let's start the rumor to start. Okay. She just doesn't seem that political a person.
No, but that would be the appeal.
It'd be like Nancy Reagan running for office. I guess that might happen. That might happen these days.
Oh, but she's much more appealing than Nancy Reagan. Nancy Reagan always seemed like a conniving, Svengali wife.
Jill Biden doesn't?
I'm not saying she's not, but I'm saying she doesn't have the image to the extent that Nancy Reagan did.
I was thinking if they both have the image when their husband is stuttering at a press conference, they finish the sentence for him. So Nancy Reagan famously did that when she said, "Doing all we can, dear." And Reagan said, "We're doing all we can." and that happens at Biden conferences too.
Now, Reagan, we now know, was in significant cognitive decline for the last, year, 2 years? What?
Not that significant. I mean, we think that's true, but the key thing about Reagan, which stunned me when I found out, is that his farewell letter, where he says basically, I'm senile, you'll never hear from me again. Okay, but it's a very well written letter.
I didn't know about that. Who did he write that to? Oh, you mean after the presidency?
After his presidency, he wrote a farewell letter. Okay.
Yeah.
There are editing marks in his own hand. Okay. He was non-senile enough to edit that letter himself. So
I'm not sure editing.
There's a limit to how senile he was.
I'm in cognitive decline, and I still edit. You can do it.
You still put out a Substack, and you're in cognitive decline.
You're not kidding. Too many.
That's the stunning thing. Although I noticed that the bylines have been muddled. It's like the Bob Wright team is putting it out. So what does that mean, Bob? Is you're just a figurehead?
No. The Monday
team?
The Monday newsletter is always mine. The Friday newsletter has long been a collaboration between me and Apocalypse Aversion intern Connor Eccles.
Okay.
The foreign policy one.
Okay. I'll stick to the narrative.
And for that matter, the ones in between, when there are ones in between, are Bob Productions.
Anyway, I think the idea we have that Biden is like just running with the progressive agenda will have changed by 6 months from now, and we'll see Biden, the volcano blowing its top and doing an about face. And that will be popular with the voters because about faces are always popular with the voters because they tell the voters you're in charge.
Yeah, but you always predict your fears, that your fears will be realized. And one question from
this isn't my fear. This is my wish.
That Biden would do a 180 on immigration?
That he'll.
I thought it was your fear
because he'll decide to control the border.
I thought it was your fear because then he would do just enough of it to preempt a true Trumpist.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But we have a million people a year coming in the border to lower wages for unskilled Americans. I would like that to stop. If Biden can stop that, that's a good thing. If he stops it because he thinks that not stopping is getting in the way of amnesty, which it is, then let him think that. Then we'll have a fight about amnesty after he stopped it.
So we did wind up talking about...
By the way, that the talks about amnesty broke down because of the border.
We did wind up talking about immigration in spite of my best efforts. When did that happen? When exactly did that happen?
I actually realized when it was happening, but I didn't tell you.
Tell me next time. Will you give me a heads up next time?
If you rewatch the video, you will see
I'll see when
the instant it happens, yes.
Damn.
So...
Speaking of... but as long as you mention my newsletter, today we have a piece about Israel and why everyone should start saying the phrase one-state solution, whether or not a one-state solution is possible.
Could you explain that?
Well, it's just a healthy influence on the discourse. If the fear of a one-state solution shakes Israelis into thinking outside the box a little, that would be a good thing. But also, I mean, realistically, this is my question: is what is Israel's long-term plan? These wars. The last one was only 7 years ago. They killed 2,000 Palestinians in Gaza out of a population of 2 million. The idea was what has to be hugely disproportionate to restore deterrence. Well, deterrence didn't last that long. Are you gonna kill that many again this time? And so what is the long-term plan? It would be great if you just solved... I'm not saying it's an easy problem by any means to solve the Palestinian problem, but I just don't think almost anyone in Israel has a plan. And
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is where they are headed, with all the ongoing settlements in the West Bank, it seems to me, to one of two destinations. Either it is a de facto one state that is pretty much apartheid, since the Palestinians in the West Bank can't vote and they are ruled by Israelis, and the settlements just seem to be leading, likely to lead to annexation, or there's some kind of ethnic cleansing, some kind of coerced migration to Jordan of the Palestinians, and I would just like to hear somebody say,
well,
what is the third alternative?
Since both those alternatives are unappealing, why do you want people to talk about a one-state solution with two unappealing outcomes?
There are two hopes. One is, in a way, three hopes. One is it might get the Israelis to think about a more generous two-state offer, which, granted, would only raise the chances of a two-state solution from like 0.5% to 1.5%. I think that's almost a lost cause. But still, I feel desperate enough to want to explore that possibility. The second thing is, it's not impossible that a one-state solution could actually work. There are a lot of people who are thinking about, binational federations and things that could work. But third, I would just like to hear Israeli leaders tell us what are they hoping will be the situation in 20, 30 years.
Yeah. At some point, a binational federation slides into two states, no? I mean, there's a spectrum, right?
Yeah, but you can imagine. The more autonomous the Palestinian,
Here's a question I've thought a lot about. If that asshole hadn't shot Rabin, was a two-state solution possible, and would history have been changed?
I don't know. I just don't really know. But that is what ushered in, in a way, the Netanyahu era. I mean, Sharon Netanyahu.
Seems to me it's the most effective act by an individual of my lifetime.
I mean, that particular guy who was a settler, who felt sufficiently threatened by Rabin's peace initiative, apparently, to think that it could lead to a two-state solution. I really don't know. I don't know.
Assassinations really seem to work. That's very annoying, but it seems to be true. The Kennedy assassination had a big impact, too.
Yeah, but what would you say the impact was? I mean, it got a lot of liberal legislation passed.
There's that, and Charlie Peters claims that he would have pulled out of Vietnam.
All the Kennedy defenders do. I don't.
Charlie's not such a Kennedy defender.
It's far from clear to me.
He is on that issue, but he's not.
Pulling out was a hard thing to do. Kennedy had run as a hawk. I don't know.
He was not in a very secure political position, but still. I'm always going with Charlie, as you know. If you can ask Jack Schaefer, I'm a Mooney.
You're a Charlie groupie?
I'm a Charlie Mooney.
So Mickey...
Schaefer calls him the Bhagwan.
Like Charlie.
So do I, but go ahead.
He has an important... the Washington Monthly's doing well with Paul Glastris at the helm.
Good.
And that, of course, is a Charlie creation. So you saw that, back to... one of our projects here is to come up with the grand unified Bill Gates, Matt Gates conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And, because, you're on board with that, right?
I love grand conspiracy theories of all sorts, but
anyway,
I don't see how we made progress against that this week, toward that this week.
Well, Matt Gates' wingman... What is it? Joel Greenberg?
Goldberg, I think. Greenberg, something like that.
Greenberg, I think.
One of those names.
He pleaded guilty or pled guilty, or whatever, which means apparently he's gonna rat on.
Well, it looks like Gates is in trouble, but what is what does that have to do with Bill
Gates? Just an
Gates?
Interesting development.
The other couple of developments are. There's a huge pro-Bill Gates backlash led by Kara Swisher, apparently, of Recode, that, this is all innuendo and guilt by proximity that says that Bill Gates screwed underage women, and I haven't charged that, but he definitely associated with Epstein. And the question when you associate with Epstein is one of the questions is, what do you do with all these beautiful women who are running around? It's the questions at least raised, but I think Gates has benefited from a bit of a backlash this past week. And there's a huge article in Politico by Tara Palmieri, which I haven't completely read, about Gates's empire under Ghislaine was too big for Maxwell to run herself, so she had to have a second level of sort of women who were like
whose
wranglers.
empire under Ghislaine? You mean
Epstein's?
Okay.
She had a second tier of sort of women lieutenant enforcers who brought in these women, and it was a huge pyramid. And I guess that means some of those women are applying for victims' compensation, but I guess it also means that some of them might flip in a way that would not be pleasant for... There are a lot of... If you want to silence people, there's a whole lot of people you have to silence. Although I doubt that... I think Ghislaine has photographs and they don't.
I am more inclined than ever, though, to doubt your theory that, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, your theory is that the timing of the Bill Gates divorce is related to the Ghislaine thing in the sense that... What? What's your theory?
They both wanted to get far away when the bomb went off, especially the wife.
Both Melinda and Bill.
If Ghislaine implicates Bill, Melinda would just as soon have already divorced him for a year.
See, I think that's not true. You are invoking as evidence the fact that apparently there are these stories that are apparently result from Melinda leaks, we surmise, about how Melinda had been working toward a divorce for a couple of years, and a big moment for her was when she understood Bill's relationship to Jeffrey Epstein and so on. I take that to be just her wanting to create the idea that, hey, she's the one who left him, he's not the one who left her, A. And B, I think she's just really pissed. It's a scorched earth policy. She's trying to taint him by association with Epstein. And that's my interpretation.
It's certainly plausible. So your theory is this: it's a who dumped who, and he dumped her, but she's saying that she dumped him. Or was ambiguous.
Well, he's not saying anything, but people tend to assume that when male billionaires get a divorce, it's because they found somebody 20 years younger.
Right, but and there was a name floated around that I didn't. It could have been a bullshit name.
I didn't see any good data on this. No, I did click on a couple of links, and I'm not proud of it, but they didn't lead anywhere.
What is your evidence for your theory?
It's just a more parsimonious theory. I mean, theories that like put a lot of stock in the timing of two seemingly unconnected events. In this case, the fact that Ghislaine's whatever may come out soon, and the fact that there was this divorce. To me, that's a more complex theory than just a straightforward, hey, she's pissed, she's torching him. Your
theory is more complex. My theory is the timing at the same time they have to do with each other. Your theory is no, they don't have to do with each other. There's a disinformation campaign by one party to pretend that they have to do with each other.
So you think whenever two things happen at the same time, the most compelling theory is that they are related? So right now, everything else happening in the world is related to our podcast that we're taking.
You said the word parsimonious. It's the most parsimonious theory is that when two things happen in proximity, that they are related.
Well, I would defend the word parsimonious, and parsimonious and compelling are in the methodology of science the same thing. The more parsimonious theory is the more compelling, by definition, if they explain equal amounts of data.
By your definition, well,
no, by Occam himself.
Well, then
Sir,
I claim it. Then
Sir
I claim
Occam to you.
Okay, then I claim.
Working on that.
Even Siri is with me on this. Did she just say? What
Siri
did she just
is
say?
talking back to me. It's 2 against 1 here.
Yeah.
It's notifying me that Robert Wright's Nonzero newsletter is up. It's pretty great.
Thanks for that. That's where you'll find that the trenchant.
So, thank you for interrupting me, Siri, for that parsimonious news.
Did she really interrupt to say that? No.
I can't tell. She interrupted me for some reason.
I think that was just a notification, an email notification, and she was.
I think when I said parsimonious, that brought her to life. Anyway, so I think your theory may be plausible, but I deny that it's more compelling. It's a good theory.
Thank you.
But actually they could both be true, couldn't they?
I just want to languish. I want to revel in that moment where you said that I'm right.
I didn't say you're right. I said it's a good theory.
So what else is going on?
Even though it's quite possibly wrong.
Inflation is rearing its head.
But you haven't connected Gates and Gates. You want a connection.
That was kind of a joke, but I'm open to possible connections. I mean, because like I'm thinking like maybe like they thought they could fool us by spelling Gates two different ways, Mickey. But we're smarter than that, right?
I'm looking for the role of right-wing Charles Johnson. He's the guy who exposed your friend Menendez.
He did not enough, apparently. Menendez didn't quite wind up in prison, unfortunately.
He got the ball rolling, and Gates brought him to the floor of Congress during one State of the Union speech, Matt Gaetz. So when he's lurking in the background, who knows what's going to leak into the press? That's all I'm saying.
So wait, as long as we got conspiracy on the brain, Mickey, and maybe we can save this for the Parrot Room. Do you realize how long we've been talking? It's alarming. Guess.
An hour and 10 minutes.
No, come on. You always do that. See, you always...
It always seems like an hour and 10 minutes.
You always know, like, if I'm trying to impress you with how low something is, you go even lower. If I'm...
It couldn't possibly be as long as the baton twirling scene in A Face in the Crowd, which I just sat through in an attempt to make it to the end of the movie, which we said we would talk about in the Parrot Room.
We will, because I have made it that far as well, but not. But I haven't made it to the end of the movie.
And we're in the same boat.
So I think we should talk about it in the Parrot Room.
We can talk, yes.
And then continue the discussion the following week after we've watched the whole thing. In the meanwhile, Parroteers can watch the movie should they choose.
It's a plan.
It's like a club. It's like a movie-watching club. But back to conspiracies. Like, have you noticed, the stuff about how originally I think it was in the Cuban embassy, something, these people had weird symptoms. Were the Russians sending microwaves through the walls? Like, you saw, this has gotten a revival of publicity.
Right, but it hasn't been debunked.
Well, look, it just seems like bullshit. I mean, okay, so here's the New York Times story from this week. Mysterious episodes that caused brain injuries in spies, diplomats, soldiers, and other U.S. personnel overseas starting 5 years ago now number more than 130 people, far more than previously known, according to current and former officials. Okay, now I want to read you this thing from the Times piece. And in one case in 2019 that has not previously been reported, a military officer serving overseas... First of all, I would note, there are a lot of military personnel serving overseas. If the database includes all military serving overseas and people are starting to think, wait, are there weird microwaves? I'll bet you're going to get a non-trivial number of reports of like, I felt weird on day X. Anyway, here it is. And in one case in 2019 that has not previously been reported, a military officer serving overseas pulled his vehicle into an intersection, then was overcome by nausea and headaches, according to 4 current and former officials briefed on the events. So, Mickey, this isn't just this guy saying it. It's the 4 people he told the story to who are saying it, okay? So I want to emphasize that. According to 4 current and former officials briefed on the events. Okay, so he's in the intersection, overcome by nausea and headaches. His 2-year-old son, sitting in the back seat, began crying. Mickey, we've got a 2-year-old who's crying. This is like... I just don't have another explanation other than microwaves. Okay, his 2-year-old son sitting in the backseat began crying. After the officer pulled away from the intersection, his nausea stopped and the child stopped crying. Mickey, we have a 2-year-old who not only started crying,
it's like a science fiction movie, Bob.
He stopped crying.
It's like a science fiction movie.
Now... there must be something here I haven't seen because they convinced 3 New York Times staffers to join in a byline about this. And this was after the Politico piece revived it. And so you'd think like the New York Times, they're usually not that eager to follow another publication, right? So you'd think like... Well,
but if they think Politico is on the case, they're going to say we have to get ours out quickly or else they're going to beat us.
Well, it's great clickbait, but I mean...
It's the Biden administration, Bob. You want a boring administration? Second-tier stories are going to bubble to the top.
Also, listen to this. I'm going to quote. I'm going to say one more thing from this. Here, I'm reading from it. The initial publicly confirmed cases were concentrated in China and Cuba and numbered about 60. The new total adds cases from Europe and elsewhere in Asia. So again, any American basically anywhere in the world has a headache. And the time, and there are now 130 such people, Mickey.
I thought that there actually were some brain changes on scans and stuff like that.
I don't know.
That maybe they.
I'm willing to stand corrected.
Okay, but that was a good wrap.
Thank you. I'm exhausted.
Okay.
You know, I can get very passionate about these things, Mickey, but it really takes it out of me.
You're known for that. How long have we been talking now?
About an hour.
Okay, because I had one more point on my thing, but I can talk about it in the Parrot Room.
Your call. Maybe you could tease it.
It's about the infrastructure deal. It's not real clickbait.
Maybe you should go ahead and get rid of that one. Go ahead and do the whole thing.
Well, there are all these reports that Biden, having proposed a $2 million hard infrastructure bill and also a $2 trillion hard infrastructure bill and a $2 trillion soft welfare bill, is going to compromise, is receptive to compromise on an $800 billion hard infrastructure bill that the Republicans would sign on to. And then, so that would take care of that. They wouldn't have to do that either through reconciliation or getting rid of the filibuster. And then they would try to pass the rest of their stuff through reconciliation. Okay? And then there's a question of who does that benefit? Why would it benefit Biden? And if it benefits Biden, why would the Republicans go along with it?
I wondered that when I heard him laying out this strategy. Like, does he want to tell the Republicans that he's going to do everything else anyway? But
they're conceding it. They're saying, well, reconciliation's legitimate. So either Republicans know he doesn't have the votes in reconciliation, or they think, well, the appealing things will be passed in this bipartisan bill, and that leaves only the unappealing things for the Democrats, like the revival of welfare, to be passed in the reconciliation bill, and surely Manchin and Sinema and a bunch of moderate Democrats will rebel against that when they don't even have the goodies when the goodies aren't even at stake. It seems like they're both engaging in wishful thinking strategy, but one of them has to be wrong, and I think one of them has to be wrong, and the pressure on Manchin and Sinema, if they block changing the filibuster to actually okay these reconciliation bills, is going to be huge. So there'll be some negotiating, and the question is, how much do they negotiate? And I think Republicans may be making a big mistake. But maybe,
What is Biden's motivation to get the Republicans to co-sign on a certain amount of this stuff?
Well, that's a very good point. Biden's agenda here is not the same as the Democrats. If we think Biden is a politician who wants to have a successful presidency and it's been hijacked by progressives, Biden will do what's necessary for a successful presidency, and they think a bipartisan infrastructure bill helps him look good and helps him get reelected, even if it doesn't produce all these other Democratic things. But that's for the Democrats to worry about, not for Biden to worry about. Biden is acclaimed as a successful president, and the progressives bitch. If you think Biden is a really committed ideologue, it's not in his interest because he really wants to get the child tax credit and the daycare credit and the deal for spending a lot of money on formal in-home care of seniors that the people who work for this one union can get. Then if he really cares about all that stuff, then he wants to pass the whole enchilada through reconciliation. If he just wants to go along with the progressives as much as he can, but make himself look good with a big infrastructure bill, hey, go, sell the progressives down the river.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of selling the progressives down the river, by the way.
I know you are.
On that issue.
Unless they flip on immigration.
Not on healthcare. He's already sold them down the river on healthcare.
How long will this take to play out?
Remember the public option, Bob? You don't hear them talk about that anymore.
No, he definitely he is not impressing us on the healthcare front.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, how long do what?
How long will this whole thing take to play out? Like, when will we be done with infrastructure land? And I mean, the whole thing, like, is this? Are we talking many months?
I think we're talking through to early next year. Yeah.
Oh God.
I mean,
we don't have to talk about it every week.
What else is there to do? And then the campaign takes hold and it becomes harder to pass things. But sometimes things pass right before an election, too. Look at welfare reform. Am I allowed to bring that up? Welfare?
I think it's mandatory, and congratulations on getting that done. It's done now.
It's about to be undone. Did I mention that?
Welfare reform? I think you did.
There's this provision in the $2 trillion welfare part that would undo welfare reform.
You mean the child tax credit?
Yes, the refundable child tax credit. If it wasn't refundable, it wouldn't be a problem.
Which would not require you to get a job in order to qualify. Which is why it would undo welfare.
It's free money for parents who don't work.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Do work.
Want to make sure we spelled that out. So I guess we are now heading into the Parrot Room. And if people want to go to patreon.com/Parrot Room, they can find a way to enter the Parrot Room. Or if they just want to support first-class conversation, which, Mickey, I think you would agree. Well, no, you wouldn't agree this has been a first-class conversation. But in the Parrot Room, we will rate this conversation. Okay. It's been okay.
For a while there was looking like the transcript of this conversation would be Bob talks for a paragraph, Bob talks for a paragraph, Mickey says a line, Bob talks for a paragraph.
Well, that's because you didn't study up on the Israel question because you don't care.
That's known as the Charlie Rose transcript. Charlie Rose. Guest, Charlie Rose. I would say that is not the analysis. Anyway, I got some paragraphs in, so I'm fine.
Okay, we'll let you have more of them.
You know what they were, Bob?
They were about
parsimonious.
Thank you. And, folks, there's more of that bird in the Parrot Room. Also, we should talk about what we're going to talk about.
And my second visual gag is going to be deployed in the Parrot Room.
Oh, that's right. Another Mickey visual gag. It's not the lustrous hair. He doesn't do reruns. It's something even better. I want to talk about... I
wouldn't say that.
What?
I would not say it's even better. But go ahead. What are you saying?
Okay. Under promise, over deliver. What Mickey's going to do won't be good at all.
There you go.
Things I want to talk about in the Parrot Room. Have you been listening to Slate's Slow Burn podcast?
No, I can't bring myself to do it.
Well, wait, you understand that the thing they taped with us is just bonus content. We're not in the real... like that whole roundtable conversation they taped with us and the other old-time Slatesters. So Slate's Slow Burn is about to run up to the Iraq War.
Right.
That whole conversation is just bonus content for Slate Plus members, and I don't think we're going to be in the other thing at all, so you can relax.
My whole life is bonus content.
These days. And speaking of which, in the Parrot Room, I want to talk about an area where I fear... I'm starting to think the Slow Burn podcast is generally good, but there's one thing I think they chickened out on. I want to talk about that.
Okay. Attacking Jeffrey Goldberg.
No plot spoilers.
Okay.
We are going to talk about the movie The Face in the Crowd. Mickey, you pride yourself on your mastery of pop culture and belittle my own conversancy in pop culture.
Right.
But I'm going to ask you a trivia question in the Parrot Room that's related to Bob Dylan, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be stumped.
Really?
It's possible.
Have you been talking to Sean Wilentz there in Princeton?
No, does he know Bob?
I think he's Bob Dylan's official historian. He says
I know Bob Dylan's literary executer, and it's not Sean Wilentz.
Sean has some official role, I think, in curating.
Oh wait, no, I don't either.
Dylan story.
I don't either. Never mind.
But I asked him my key Bob Dylan question, and he didn't answer.
He's just playing hard to get.
I'll tell you what my key Bob Dylan question was in the Parrot Room.
Oh man,
how about that?
So much bonus content. Oh, maybe talk about the on cancel culture. Maybe this base camp thing. Well, it's related. And then there was an Apple cancellation.
Boy, a cancellation! My God, That never happens.
We don't have to talk about that.
Stop the presses.
But the base camp thing is generally interesting in the context of cancel culture.
Good. I didn't follow the base camp thing, so I know people say it's important.
I'm not hugely conversant. So, people could...
Compared to me, you're an educated man.
Is that a line from a famous something?
Bananas, see?
Oh.
You're exactly what I say.
If it's what you say... I love it. People could smash the like button. They could rate and review The Wright Show. And what else? I mean, this is just like an uncontrollable spasm of self-promotion. Stop me, Mickey.
Can we talk about whether we should have ads on the show?
Here or in the Parrot Room?
Anywhere.
In the Parrot Room. We should talk about it in the Parrot Room. Well, I throw it out there. I mean, should we tell the whole story in the Parrot Room? About how we were approached by like a major phenomenon? We were approached by a major phenomenon.
This is where the ad would go. This is where you would sell beats.
Folks, well, what's hilarious, I mean, let's go ahead and say what's hilarious about A Face in the Crowd is, when we talked about doing ads, we talked about the fact that, well, some podcasters just do them ironically. They're kind of half subverting the product because they're cool. And we also talk about the fact that, over the last few years, about 24% of podcast commercials have been mattress commercials, Casper mattress commercials. Anyway, A Face in the Crowd has a subversive mattress commercial. I think you pointed this out. Did you already point this out? You pointed it out.
Not here. I pointed it out to you.
To me personally, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but he makes fun of the mattress company, but yet their sales increase anyway.
But since you pointed out, I've seen that part of the movie. Okay, so is that it? We're going to go into Parrotland. Okay.
Okay.
We will see you there.
See you there.
Oh boy.